Welcome into a super fan session of the Illini Cast. I'm your host, Austin Berkland, alongside Blair Bruns, who was in Omaha for the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament. And Blair, let's just go right into it. What was your first thoughts as you found out where we were going, how we're buying the tickets? Go step by step through the process of getting to the game.
Yeah, it's been following it for a few weeks and had it narrowed down. It was going to be there's three trips I could make, and Pittsburgh, Omaha, and Memphis. My brother lives in the Quad Cities, so Omaha seemed to be a pretty good place. Also have an aunt and uncle there. It's like, okay, probably have lodging taken care of, and at least the last 2 years, and we went to the Big Ten tournament in 21 when we were all sitting in pods. And after having that experience, kind of like being on the road with the team, I've always loved going to the bragging rights game, try to get to a few away games, but just kind of got hooked on that experience. And so now every year during Selection Sunday, which is fantastic that you have Selection Sundays were included in those on a regular basis, but as soon as Illinois is called, it's like we're at work in the office. Like trying to figure out where tickets are, trying to make a decision. Is this what we want to do? Do you want to buy the first session? Do we want to buy an all session? And then get through that. And then it's like, okay, let's play back. And it's like 8 o'clock, and you don't know where anybody's going except you.
Who was the most competitive fan base to get tickets with in your session or in the all session passes?
Anywhere I've ever bought tickets against in my life is going to be having a drive that's 2.5 hours away from Des Moines and Ames. Like you went in Saturday night and you're like, oh, this is why I paid what I paid. This is 70% red. And the scary part about that is when we did get to Saturday, it's like they probably want to face Duquesne. So you're almost like we might be in a road environment here.
Absolutely. I mean, the Cinderella becomes who everybody is rallying for in the entire arena. And Illinois had the bad feeling that Duquesne fans, pardon me, would be multiplied with the Iowa State fans. When BYU lost, was there a mass exodus of blue out of the arena for the second round?
BYU is interesting. There was a decent amount of people that left. It wasn't like, oh, this is going to free up a ton of tickets. But BYU's a fan base. Anytime I go on vacation, I feel like I see that logo somewhere. They're everywhere. It's almost like
So,
the Notre Dame to the Catholics. The BYU represents
yes,
represents the Mormons of America.
that is so true. So, Iowa State, they get their fan base in there. What is the Iowa State fan base like? Is it a rowdy fan base? Is it a mean fan base? What is that Iowa State fan base like from what you've seen in the first
Oh,
two
they were
rounds of the
great.
NCAA tournament?
I think one thing that helped was like I had Iowa State fans in front of me, and we started out behind the hoop in the first session, which kind of get ahead of myself on the whole story of things. But we had Iowa State fans in front of us that like had the sweet like kind of the jacket you had, and we talked to them immediately like, oh, we farm and we're in agriculture and all these things, and it's like immediate bond of like we're going to be boys. Because for everybody listening, I come from a farm working ag. And then there's guys behind us that were telling the guys, sit down. And I was like, why are you rooting for Iowa State? And I don't see anything that's Iowa State on you. It was just one of those kind of, I'm sorry that they bought better seats than you.
Yes, absolutely. I
But they're
mean,
good. I mean, we were given kind of like talking to them, talking a little smack. And also every time Washington State came down into the three, you're just kind of like, without anybody seeing. Because it was close in the first half.
how was the NCAA tournament environment compared to a regular environment of a college basketball game for those who have not gone?
I think being on the road is just absolute. Like those pre parties, there's something where you can pay for insider subscriptions to get information, but you walk in the door and you're like, "What's up, Dion?" are we gonna take this one? You run into Deion Thomas. The band came and played back there. There's Kathleen Knight's crew with Icon that are setting up booths. Like Josh Whitman's walking through the door. I got a picture of Dan Damask. Like you you see everybody. I mean, I walk by Hansberry's parents. Like it's just kind of really intimate in a really cool way that and people appreciate. It's like, yeah, we're Illinois and we travel well type of. I mean, as far as the atmosphere of the end game, I went to Des Moines last year and just kind of like, I need to see this end in front of my own eyes. This isn't pretty, but maybe there's enough talent to make a run. But this year it was like, we're grateful to be here, and I just kept telling everybody, ain't no curses. Like we've got a big game on our hands, especially going like Saturday, because you could feel an influx of people that showed up because you're not having to take off work Thursday and Friday or finding a place to stay in Omaha Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But it's incredible if you get the opportunity to go with the team and go on the road and go see those kind of environments. It's awesome. Like I always think that's why I love the Mizzou game because really you grow up, and if you're a basketball fan, you grow up watching your high school team play. And about 30% of that gym every time is the opposing fans. And there's going to be interactions. Or you're grabbing your coat and you're leaving. I mean, this is a mutual site, but it's the closest thing you can get to like high school. I mean, sometimes we'll see other Big Ten fans that bring maybe 3% of the State Farm Center and you can hear them during free throws or something. And then there's sometimes where they're just in that visitors area, but it's nothing like the atmosphere of when you played your rival in high school. And this going to the tournament or going to the bragging rights game, that's the closest thing you can get. And I think that's some of the coolest stuff. And also just being in the bar and be like, I'm going to start an ILL chant right now. And it gets echoed a while. And then you hear like a Wazoo chant or an Iowa State chant. There's just so much pride involved where everybody's just having a good time and everybody's happy to be in the postseason.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of that Missouri environment where in St. Louis area, you'll have fans that went to the same high school, but one went to Mizzou, one went to Illinois, and same in the Chicago area as well. So there is that sort of environment. But in the NCAA, you don't have the history per se with a lot of these teams coming in. So it's more of a cheerful environment, I would guess, rather than just tough as nails kind of environment like the arch rivalry game.
Yeah, I agree with you. This one on Thursday is a little different that we're coming up
I would
into.
agree with that.
Like working in ag in my entire career, like they bring you in, we got brought in as sales trainees, and it's like I went to Illinois, you went to Purdue, and you went to Iowa State, and maybe there's a Kansas State kid mixed in there. But I mean, my Twitter feed from ag is like I've been hearing about Iowa State all year, and there's just a
So,
little bit like there's some bragging rights involved in that.
oh, absolutely, there is. I mean, especially in the ag industry, two behemoths in the ag world going at it, college to college, Iowa State versus Illinois. I mean, this is going to be the Ag Bowl
Yeah,
in basketball
almost.
coming up. I know you have some other ag schools that are pretty strong, but Iowa State and Illinois, I mean, those programs are pretty
And then you got
top
Purdue doing their
notch.
thing too.
Right, right. So this tournament may end up coming down to the ag schools at the very end, which will be fascinating to see. But
They typically
let's go.
travel well too. I feel like because
Yeah,
they typically come from that small town. I rooted for the home school. I went to my home state school as opposed to living in New York and being a Northwestern fan or an Illinois fan. Like,
right. I mean, you think of the East Coast. A lot of New York City kids go to ACC programs just to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. In Illinois, in Champaign, in the Big Ten, the current Big Ten structure, a lot of them are from the area, like the WCIA area, for lack of a better term, going to Illinois. The same thing with Iowa State. So that is going to be fascinating to see the crowd at Boston, where both fan bases can travel really well. But let's go game to game and how the crowd was reacting. First half of Morehead State, really slow start. Was the
Yeah,
crowd did the crowd start to tense up a little bit because of the Brad Underwood past in the NCAA tournament, or was the confidence level still there because you have guys like Terrence Shannon and other guys like that?
I think we've seen it enough, right? Like we've seen plenty of games. We came off the Big Ten tournament where it's like they're making some shots, but you can clearly see that this can't last forever. I mean, you are. I think it was like Piper or somebody I was watching. Was like I was 60% nervous. I mean, my heart was pounding a little bit, but at the same time, it never got to the point where it's time to freak out. Like DJL came in and hit two threes. That was great. We started doing our thing, and it was very, everything's surreal when you're in there and it's going on. And after the game, I was just like, that happened extremely fast. It was like 5 or 6 minutes of game time that took us to go up 20, and it was over. It's like the 14-minute to the 9-minute mark, I think.
And then you had the game against Duquesne where Illinois was pretty much dominant from the tip off to the final play of the game, and the clock hits quadruple zeros. Whenever you're watching a game like that, I know I felt it in the NLCS in 2016 with the Cubs, where you beat the Dodgers so soundly that it wasn't a nervous factor. So, what was the elation like for you in that arena during that second game where you heard Illinois is going to the Sweet 16?
You, you know what's going to happen in 40 minutes, like, or an hour and a half in real time after that 30 minutes started, but you're just like, this is who we are, and this is what we've been waiting for, and it was just sense of pride. And I found myself turning around. We were fortunate enough before the game. I was sitting like maybe 25 rows behind the hoop. Not a bad seat. But when I saw Washington State fans in between the game, like, I'm going to go talk to them. And we found a way. Some people were leaving, like, can we have your seats? So, like, yeah. So we're in the seventh row, which was phenomenal. It just kept turning around and just, like, fist pumps. Like, I yelled at Derek Piper a couple times. Like, hey, Derek, times are good. Like, these are good times to be like, we're going to this Sweet 16. The nerves aren't happening. We're having a fun time. Like, it's big time, and we're playing well. And it's not the fact of like we got handed a break, and we certainly got a break, and we were well overdue for a break. But we didn't come out and like you'd come through that Big Ten tournament, and you're like, how is this team needing a timeout to be told to go board? No, this is a mission.
Right.
Like they wanted to beat the living snot out of Duquesne and make a statement. And they were just doing it. And it didn't matter that they got out to a lead. It's just like it was full gas. It was an ass kicking.
Now, where does the in-person experience rank for you in the moment where the crowd, where the team and the band all are congregating in that hotel? Where does that rank in your in-person Illini basketball experience as a fan?
I've thought about this actually. I think this the whole series of days. He made the Sweet 16, and it was. I kept having weird moments throughout. I got to meet Whitman and run into him, and I wanted that for a long time because I just look up to his leadership, and that I was like, this is a great day. And then at the end of the Morehead State game, we ended up moving to center court. We were probably 16 rows up, almost like equivalent to the hoop on the sideline, and moved down. And I looked around, and one guy had moved down there, and it was a guy that bought us shots at the bar earlier. And like, it's been a day, and we're back here to celebrate together. And then we looked behind, and a guy yelled at me, and it was we had a set of 5 tickets last year, and my cousin couldn't go last minute. We sold the ticket. We just had a kid that came down that was an Illini fan, and that was the only time we met him, and that was the last time I thought about him after that. And he was back right behind me from Des Moines, and we were like celebrating. And then like Saturday was a great day, and then we get to the end of Saturday and was hoping to meet the team after the game, like just celebrate, and saw Brad distantly, and ended up seeing Coach Alexander, my high school coach. I'd never played varsity, but was always involved in the program, and got to give him a high five. And it was just good to see everybody. And so we decided I wasn't gonna go to my aunt and uncle's, and just wanted one beer to just like this is a vibe right now. And the bar I went to and actually was in Omaha for the Texas game when we played Madison Square Garden the year before and had a good time. And it was just completely packed full of Creighton fans. Like, this is not going to happen. Like, we're never going to get served. So we go to walk to over by the mattress factory where our car was parked too, and we'll do it there. And I looked to my right at the Marriott, and it was just all orange in there. I'm like, let's pop in here real quick. And so it's completely not planned. I was looking for the perfect nightcap, and that was it. I mean, I took a picture with Barry Hauser. Had the band was playing. I mean, the kids are having a great time. I will say one thing is very kind of interesting. Will Leach wrote a great article about sports and being, as you get older in life and you're sitting there and you just want to talk to Brad, man. You got these little kids and they look you in the eye and you're like, I'm not a fool. I love your team. I understand what these kids do, but like, let's go. I'm proud of you. Like, this means a ton to me. We need to raise these young fans. I hope I don't look silly, but like, this is where my heart and soul is. And it just almost feels a little silly in the moment, but that's sports.
I mean, I don't think that's silly at all. I mean, you think of where Illinois was with the end of Bruce Weber and John Gross. We lost an entire generation of young Illini fans in that era because they weren't winning enough and there was an excitement to bring your kids to the State Farm Center or the Assembly Hall back in the day to showcase that team and showcase what Illinois basketball really is. Unlike our childhoods, where you wanted to go see Brian Cook, you wanted to go see Corey Bradford, you wanted to go see Darren Williams,
You're
D
lucky to get a
Brown.
ticket.
The list goes on. Yeah, you were sitting up in the final row at some points, and you were very, very happy about sitting in that final row because you wanted to see Brian Cook, you wanted to see the Champ is Here video on the video board, and that was the lifestyle. You literally were there for Tuesdays and maybe a Saturday or a Sunday every time they were in Champaign. You wanted to try to get there, or you were watching it on the local WCIA affiliate if you couldn't get that ticket. These kids now, they know Io DeSumo, they know Kofi Coburn, they know Terrence Shannon and Marcus Damask, and
They know
that's
Brad.
yes. And that is going to be what jars Illinois in the future to even further heights because you're going to have those fans that have grown up with them. And then they're going to be just vivacious Orange Crush fans whenever they get to college and stay at the U of I. I mean, this is going to lead to so many benefits for the university and the basketball program, just having those kids experience that in this moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a top. I mean, that's the answer. Like, to be there, just like right there with them and to like celebrate. It was like being in high school and being back at the school, man. Like, it was just as intimate.
Yeah, it felt like it from the photos and the videos that were published on social media. It legitimately felt like your team just won the super sectional and you were getting the fire truck come into town with That's what it truly looked like and felt like, and it brings a tear to your eye thinking about what Champaign means to the U of I basketball program and what the U of I basketball program means to the greater area of Champaign as well.
Absolutely.
Before we get further going, we have a sponsorship read. Hey, beer lovers, Riverlands Brewing Company, your favorite Chicagoland craft beer friends, are still in party mode from the recent 5-year anniversary bash last weekend. In case you missed it, both of the barrel aged Imperial Stouts are on tap and on sale in the new 500 milliliter bottles. And IPAs is calling your name. Grab the anniversary triple IPA. All three will be gone very soon. Don't wait up. Visit them at riverlandsbrewingcompany.com and follow their socials for all beer releases, food trucks, and events. Riverlands Brewing Company, brewed by friends, for friends, must be 21, enjoy responsibly. Follow us on IlliniCast and follow me at AB1132. Follow Blair at Blair Bruns. Thank you for the 50 people that are watching currently. Thank you. And then I'm sure we'll get a lot of views afterwards. So like, comment, and subscribe. If you have a question for Blair and I, make sure to comment them in the various streams on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. So, Blair, let's go away from your experience in Omaha and let's think about this season as a whole. What have been your thoughts on Brad Underwood going from the monkey off of his back and into this new era of Sweet 16, Brad?
I think the monkey off his back is, Sweet 16's part of it. I think he also got a monkey off his back in the Big Ten tournament, and what made me feel really good before the tournament was you went before. I mean, there's several things we could talk about that happened without the year, but the big thing that people would always have on Brad, yeah, Brad's a winner and Brad's a great CEO, but I think we could have all agreed that Brad isn't the best, maybe to say that lightly, at in-game adjustments. And when we went through the Big Ten tournament, like you came out of there and you're like, our biggest problem or like something we're scared about is one, we haven't finished tight games, but the other thing is like we haven't made the adjustments. And you had 3 games where Brad made perfect adjustments and called every timely timeout. Like, and you're like, I trust you in those moments to do those things, and with those, that's the sky's the limit. Now you've gotten the monkey off, and I mean, we had a group chat where we're talking about, are you happy with the Sweet 16? Like, yes, to an extent of like what you told me the situation. This is gettable. I'm very nervous about Thursday. I mean, they're a tough team, but the one thing you're lacking throughout the year is a marquee win. Here's your opportunity to get the marquee win when it matters. Like this is a team you can go out and win, and then you win
Absolutely. I
this one,
mean,
and then like you know what else you haven't done this year? Beat a team that you shouldn't beat.
that
Are
can
we
be
saving
UConn.
this? What?
That can be UConn. I
Yeah,
think Illinois should go in fully expecting to win against Iowa State. Yes, I know they have the top three, top two defense in Ken Palm or other rating services, whatever your standard bearer is. They're in the top tier of defense in college basketball. But whenever you have a top tier offense in today's world of college hoops, I think offense trumps defense anytime, especially with a guy like Terrence Shannon. This isn't a team effort where if everyone is locked down, then you're kind of screwed. You have a dog, you have a LeBron James style player that can take over at any instance in a game. And that's why I'm not nervous about this Iowa State game because I feel like Iowa State has not had to handle a guy like Terrence Shannon Jr. This year. And I don't think they're ready to anticipate and see that kind of style of play. So I think with Marcus Damascus fadeaway jumpers, I feel like with Dane Dange's ability to gain size, Coleman Hawkins can shoot from the 3-point line. It's a pick your poison kind of offense for Illinois.
you
And
have multiple
this Iowa
teams you
State
can roll out.
defense, yes. Yeah.
Like
This
it's
Iowa
not
State
just you have
defense
a
is going to be
backup.
difficult.
You don't have a role player that's going to be the next Marcus, or you have a guy like Coleman that you're trying to develop into that starting role. Like maybe traditionally you'd have seen in like our program or the Big Ten, the history of the Big Ten. Like you have entirely different pieces that could start other places. And also, I was thinking about this today. Was you feel there was a certain we felt a certain way between December 23rd and like December 25th this year. We had a 3 day stretch where we were on top of the world and thought we had Final Four potential, and it was all clicking. And this is before I would say we fully committed to booty ball.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten better since then, but we're backwards. Like this whole ship is clicking. You might want something like a little more from Justin Harmon, or like seeing maybe a Quincy Trey go down in the last game, but really like the sum of all parts is incredible. And you're
And,
not just skimming by in that first round. You are clicking, and things are coming together like Brad preaches. This is an
and
A right now.
yeah. And I mean, you're looking at Brad Underwood too. He's clicking on all cylinders at the moment. He's made the right in game adjustments in that Big Ten tournament. They were down double digits to Ohio State. They were down double digits to Wisconsin, and they still won those games, and they won those games kind of handily at the very end. And you're looking at a team that's gaining confidence by playing the likes of a Morehead State and a Duquesne and how they crushed those opponents and the scoring outputs. I think this is the exact right moment where you want to be offensively to face a tough defense like this where Iowa State might be thinking, yeah, we're confident we can stop anything. But until you run into the monster that is the Illinois offense, you don't really know what you're dealing with.
And that's a whole nother level of effort that we've seen. Not that that should never be an issue, but we're playing hard. And I don't know how much we'll talk about the game on Thursday, but one thing I don't think is talked about enough is like, oh, they're gonna push you around and they're gonna get handsy. That's fine, and like people think that we should be intimidated by that, but they don't let us get handsy on the perimeter in the Big Ten. And when you let Ty Rogers get handsy and get to put his body around a little bit, you have a guy that makes some stupid fouls or might get into foul trouble that all of a sudden is an absolute dog.
Yeah, and you
Like,
have a guy like Quincy Guerrier who can be physical as well as a power forward. So if you're allowing him to have some hands on some Iowa State bodies, that's another thing that Iowa State's going to have to deal with as well. Iowa
yeah, I
State's
think their
offense,
fans are their fans are expecting this like horrible defense, and they're in for a bad day.
Iowa State has a score, leading score is 13.7 points this year. That's not enough to beat a number 3 offense in the country. So I really, really struggle to find the weakness that Illinois has against this Iowa State team. We are deep, especially if you have Dre Gibbs Lahorn step up and hit some threes. When you have Luke Goody, the way he's been performing in this NCAA tournament, and Dane Danger we've mentioned as well. I just don't see the weakness that Iowa State can exploit. And it's just going to come down to Illinois playing smart, avoid the turnovers. And that's where I think this Illinois offense can just propel you enough to take over Iowa State. And then you're dealing with a game against UConn if it gets to that point. So I
I
just
refuse to
feel
look past
confident.
it, but I feel good. I'm not going to feel
Hmm.
too good, but like what's making me so nervous is the fan in me. Not like if I was outside and just betting on this game and not caring. But yeah, I'm with you. I think there's things that they do offensively, and they're in turn, as much as we feel like they're underestimating our defense, I think we're probably underestimating their offense a little bit and what they can do there. But that's why you get to roll the ball out.
That's exactly right. And I mean, you rolled the ball out against like BYU and Duquesne came out on top. I think this similar situation could happen here where Illinois will find themselves in a Final Four just because they played really well.
It's gonna take everything, especially to get past UConn. Yeah, they don't. Another thing about Iowa State is they don't board particularly well, and our offensive rebounding has been phenomenal. We've got guys that are always looking to do that, and they don't really play great transition defense at all.
I mean, there's a reason why public money is going to the U of I.
Yeah,
I just feel like the confidence level is there for Illinois to win this game.
it's got to do it.
Now, which guy not in the starting lineup has really impressed you this entire season? Not just the Dane Danger late season run, but who is the bench player this year that you're like, my goodness, this guy stepped up time and time again throughout the year?
It hasn't been consistent, AB. It, like you've had spurts of Harmon that have been great. Goody for a couple of games. I know he was hurt a little bit and was a little bit of defensive liability. You've had Dane as of recently. Um, I don't I don't. There hasn't been somebody off the bench that's played that has been that. To answer your question, but I do think now, like one thing about Luke, I was bringing up this argument back in I think January February when you brought up Luke's short sample size. Even if you go back to Houston and when we played Chattanooga that year, even as a freshman, and then last year
Yeah.
against Arkansas, Luke has always shot the ball well in March in the tournament. When things weren't going, he's the guy that you'd kick out, and you felt like every rim was cold for our starters. and he'd come in and rain back-to-back threes and bring you within 7. Like, I, it's Dane though. Like, to answer your
Hmm.
question, even though it hasn't been Dane, we went on and we talked after the Ohio State game when we played at their place, and Dane getting a few minutes, we thought like just keeping himself engaged, because when we were really gonna need him, we just had no idea. Like, it was just gonna be at the very end. Like, how impressive is that for him to keep? I feel like that's probably a broke record to a lot of people because that's everything they want to talk about. But I can't sit up here and lie to you and say it's something else going on right now. It's what allows us to play as an entirely different team. Like, you're playing 5 out, and then you're like, we can just post them up all night.
I mean, he is 13 for 13 from the field in this NCAA tournament.
It's
That is
crazy.
unbelievable. That
He's got
efficiency
some of
is
those little
incredible.
runners where he catches the side of the glass where you're like, he's definitely feeling himself, and I think that like comes down a little bit. I don't think it comes down to the mean, because where the mean lies, he wasn't getting consistent minutes enough to get rolling. But he loves being a part of it. I think you're in a position now where you're like, well, he's probably gone to where I think that staff's fighting for him. That's a 12-8 guy.
29 points in this tournament and then 14 boards. But the most impressive thing so far, only 2 personal fouls through the 2 games in this NCAA tournament so far. I mean, that is unreal for a guy who has struggled defensively. And I just really feel like he he has transformed himself into a more confident player, and that only bodes well for next year. And I'm really excited for that.
I mean, you also don't have like Reese backing him down or any situation like that in these first 2 games. But yeah, there hasn't been dumb fouls by him.
Now
If you get
let's
1 for 2 from the line, you're great.
right. Now let's rank some things right now. I know one guy in the comments, Brock Johnson, he loves himself some rankings. Where would you rank Brad Underwood in Illinois coach history as of right now? Do you have him over Lou Henson,
No.
Bill Self?
Yes.
I
It's
mean, Bill
very,
Self
very
has
close.
did not go to a Final Four with Illinois.
Nobody, I mean, Sweet 16, Elite 8, round of
Right.
32. I mean, it was awesome, but like, you get Marcus Griffin, Frank Williams, and Brian Cook. You got all Americans that like you inherit after Lon Kruger took the '99 team that was the 13 seed or what at 12, whatever 11. I don't know what it was in the Big Ten tournament that year in '99. Turned them into like a 5 that eventually lost to Florida, and you got everybody back, and the program was sexy. And then you brought in some good freshmen for your last tenure. Like, he executed very well, but like, he didn't have to rebuild anything, and neither did Bruce. Like, Bruce didn't have to rebuild, and Bruce pretty much did the opposite of rebuilding. I think
Yeah,
now
he
that we have
demolished.
Brad, we're just like, what was that, and why were we okay with some of those things at the end of the tenure? Because we are holding on to what he did in '05, but really everything after '06 was garbage.
I
So
mean, just think. Yeah, I mean, think of where Brad Underwood started out with and the recruits that he had to try to get, like a Jermaine Hamlin, a Georgie Bashanishvili, and now where
Alec
he's at.
Griffin, like he just brought in the crew, man.
Yeah,
Tom Kane, he
and
tried out Adonis, De La Rosa. Like he was just trying to find something to piece together. And everybody's like, oh, he's just kicking all these people out because they're in that first year after like all these people was like, this is not my style. I'm like, I'm sorry, John Gross is just like no consequences. You do whatever you want on the basketball court, and we don't win. And I mean, mean, you basically have the same thing with Epps and Sky Clark and everybody that just left. Like,
I mean, you think of what Brad Underwood was trying to find. He was just trying to find his guys, guys that believed in his vision. And those guys were foundational pieces for what was built, which is incredible to say. Like a guy like Georgie was a foundational piece for Io, and it's just became to grow and grow and grow into the point you're at now, where you're in a Sweet 16, where you have the most Big Ten wins in the last 5 years, more than any other Big Ten coach. I mean, I don't know any other Big Illini coach that has had that honor. I know that in the 80s it was much different when you had Lou Henson going up against guys like Bobby Knight and Gene Cady, but now with Brad Underwood, I don't. There's not been an Illini coach that's done that.
well, there's not. He hasn't done those things, but the biggest thing that Illini coaches like we've never seen before, and this translates to work and careers, and apart from coaching, is his ability to swallow his pride, put his ego down, and just find out what's going to work and to explore new things. Like he's ditched what he thought was going to work and wasn't stubborn towards that. He has done that time and time again, even last year, for example, and just ditched the offense he thought he was going in the year and find something that worked. And he did that with Io's team one year. Like even this year, going to the booty ball and like talking, allowing the Jay Wright thing and like meeting with him, and he just hasn't had like he's just swallowed his pride because he wants to win so bad, which is just absolutely amazing. And then you go back to another thing that he's done that no other coach ever had to face was figuring out this portal.
Yes, I mean, you think of where he began in the portal with Matthew Meyer and the like, and to go into getting guys that are his style and who want to play for the betterment of the team, like a Marcus Domask, like a Justin Harmon, and like a Quincy Guerrier. I mean, that just showcases his ability to think of what kind of players will work best in the system as opposed to just getting the star transfers time and time again. That doesn't work all the time. So he found Missouri Valley type guys,
Name
and
a place where it has worked in the last 2 years.
I can't think of one. It's always been a more of a cohesive unit that wins championships nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, because there's too much going on and there's too much distractions with NIL and everything else going on where it can be me, me, me. You just have to have guys that are focused on winning and that want to push those things aside. Sure, guys are getting paid, but who cares? I
Commenters, I want to hear this one. This is one I'm going to ask Blair. So get the typing fingers ready. Where does Terrence Shannon Jr. rank all time in Illini basketball players? I feel like it's closer to the top than people would anticipate.
name one Illini basketball player in the history that wants that smoke, like that wants some, like that wants to try to guard that or thinks that I
I think D Brown had some of that. I feel like some of the 1989 guys had it defensively, but offensively, nobody comes close to what Terrence Shannon can bring.
no. I wish like you could take how he. I know they use a track guy to be Red Grange, but just to see like two holograms of D Brown and Terrence Shannon with the ball in their hands, I think Terrence is just as fast. And instead of like laying it up, it's like meet me at the rim. 2 years, I mean that's kind of hard. I think that people get connected with players emotionally. I
Right.
Io bringing us back is always going to play a part of legacy, and I think the legacy can be greater as opposed to like singularly who's the greatest player and who do you want on your team too.
Tyler Nagel commented, no one has had a season like Terrence, and he missed 6 games.
one Hundred
That is
percent.
true. He missed
Like
6 games, and he has still had the stat line of that he's had. He has been a guy that has nobody else has scored more points in a season than Terrence Shannon Jr. in an Illini uniform.
I want to say something about
Unreal.
it's incredible. And when I was in the hotel after the game and Terrence walked in, there's something in his eye. Like he's a nice enough human being to stop and write art, like give autographs to the kids. But that dude's on a mission. Like it's focused, and I feel like it's been there most of the year, as opposed to last year where he would check out. You're like, if this guy's ever fully engaged, this is gonna be the scariest thing you've ever seen, and we're at that point, and we are at that point in Missouri, and then we had to do the integration process, and it's like, is it ever gonna be full? And it's like, yes, and it's better, and he's just on one. I think it's hard to say that somebody's better. I cannot like, I refuse to make any argument about 89 players because I wasn't born. It's all good things. Like, there's plenty of players when you evaluate now, when you've watched a lot of games, and I've watched a lot of games since like '01, where you've screamed at certain players and you've been
Yeah.
frustrated. And I just know the highlights of the '89 team and people saying how good they were. And I kind of see every modern player as what they were as a whole, I would say. Like, I did not want, after there was some portal things happening after the 22 season, and Coleman made some very interesting comments about Brad. And they were kind of going back and forth. And I was like, if you're not bought into this thing, you got to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he stuck around, and I'm like, I was just so against Coleman. I didn't like how he'd check out. I didn't like his attitude. And then 23 was like, I was coming around. And then at the end of the Arkansas game, it was a postseason interview, and I wish we had the audio. He was sitting in a chair, and he's like, well, we thought these things were just built, and we didn't have to fight for them, and we forgot what we had to do for our culture all the time, and I didn't stand up enough. And I was like, all right, I'll run through a brick wall for you. Run it back, please.
I mean, that was an incredible moment. I feel like that was the transition of people's thoughts on what Coleman Hawkins was as a basketball player and what he was as a man. I mean, he always had to be the number 3 or number 2 guy with Kofi Coburn and Ayo DeSumo. So he could step back, he could be a little more bit more silly, and still play under Ayo and Kofi. Then he realized I had to be a leader and I wasn't really ready to be a leader. And then whenever that all clicked, that was the transformational piece for Coleman Hawkins into him trying to be an alpha and him trying to be a guy that NBA executives can trust in clutch situations. And I know he's had some lapses at times. Penn State was a notable one, but by and large, he has played some really smart basketball this year. He has been such a. I think he. I'll go as far as to say this. He has been the most improved basketball player I've ever seen from year one to the current year that he's gone in a lot of basketball history, at least in my history of life. So I mean that's extremely high praise because of all the guys that have came before him, but it's just amazing to see his transformation as a player.
Yeah, I'd probably name like a couple just because they were not had no expectations that came. Like Bertrand's one of them. I know there's a few others that came out where it's like I never expected much out of Bill Cole either. But um, back to the point on you're saying with Coleman being an alpha. I mean, you got to think back that this isn't a guy that even had to try to lead his team to a regional championship either.
No, he had
The
Jalen
guy went
Green.
to prolific prep and had 5 stars around him and never had to like be that alpha, not even at the high school stage. And I think that poses a problem with like the pressure and every. I mean, that's the modern day recruiting with all these kids going to prep schools. Like you never have to go just like put the town on your back and take over a ball game, but you get more recruiting exposure. But that's just an interesting little wrinkle to this conversation. But
All right, Blair, it is time. We're going to get your prediction for Illinois and Iowa State.
Illinois by 7.
I have it similar. I have Illinois by 9. I just feel like this Illinois team is so much better offensively, like I said earlier on, and they have that alpha in Terrence Shannon Jr. And Iowa State will not be able to handle that. Stars win in March, and Illinois has the biggest star in all of college basketball right now, and that includes Mr. Zach Edey.
Yeah, and especially I mean, even watching Wazoo play them, none of those Wazoo players, and no offense to any of them out there, but you don't have guys, man. Like you have your post player didn't have a set of post moves. Like there were so many times where it's like if you just had an opportunity, I understand that Iowa State's defense is great, but they weren't able to penetrate. They weren't, and it wasn't because of the defense so much. It just they weren't an impressive basketball team. They made some of the open threes to keep it close, but
Blair,
we'll
I
see.
want to thank you. Yes, we will see. Blair, I want to thank you for joining this super fan session. Thank you for sharing your story about Omaha and telling fans how it was in the city when it was flooded with red and orange of Iowa State and Illinois fans. So I appreciate you joining us. And if you're watching, 91 viewers, thank you so much for that. Go ahead and like us on YouTube. That is at IlliniCast on YouTube. And then you can follow us on Twitter at IlliniCast, at AB1132 for me personally. And then Blair, you can follow him at Blair Bruns. Blair, thank you and go Illini.
Let's go.